Ever heard about that epic face-off,
Yeah.
David and Goliath? You know, the one with the young shepherd taking down that giant Philistine warrior?
Oh, yeah. Classic.
Well, get ready for a bit of a twist, because today we're diving deep into the world of the Philistines.
All right.
It turns out there's way more to their story than what those classic Bible tales might suggest.
Yeah. What's really fascinating about the Philistines is that archaeology is giving us a much more complex picture of them.
Okay.
They weren't just these one-dimensional bad guys, you know?
Right.
It was a vibrant society with a rich and really multifaceted history.
Exactly. We're going to go beyond those Sunday school stories.
Yeah.
And really uncover who these sea peoples actually were, where they came from, and what their daily lives were really like. I mean, we're talking about their homes, their cities, even the food they ate.
Yeah. And to really unpack all of this, we're going to turn to an expert who's literally digging into their world.
Okay.
Dr. Aaron Mayer. He's a leading archaeologist excavating the Philistine city of Gath, one of the most important Philistine sites in the whole region.
Yeah, to really wrap our heads around the Philistines, we need to set the stage.
Okay.
They kind of emerged during this period of massive change in the late Bronze Age,
Yeah.
around the 13th to 12th centuries BCE. I mean, it was a time of crazy climate upheaval, collapsing empires,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and these huge migrations across the Mediterranean.
Like a domino effect
Right.
across the ancient world.
Yeah,
Yeah, you had these major powers like the Hittites and the Egyptians
right.
really struggling to hold on. And these groups known as the Sea Peoples, they were on the move, shaking things up all across the Mediterranean.
Sea peoples. Okay, so that sounds kind of ominous.
Yeah.
Who exactly were these sea peoples?
Well, the Egyptians described them as these diverse groups coming from the sea,
Okay.
possibly raiding or looking for new lands to settle. I mean, think of them kind of like coalitions of migrants and adventurers
Right.
pushed by all sorts of factors like climate change or political instability. But here's the thing. The Philistines are the only group from among these sea peoples with clear evidence of actually establishing a new culture in the Levant around 1200 BCE.
Okay, so for years, the prevailing theory was that the Philistines, you know, potentially coming from the Aegean region,
Right.
came in and violently conquered Canaanite cities.
Yeah,
Almost like a Bronze Age D-Day invasion.
that was the classic narrative.
Yeah.
But as Dr. Mayer's research and other archaeological findings are showing, it wasn't quite that simple. It
Okay.
wasn't this straightforward conquest.
Gotcha.
Instead, what we see is the Philistines settling alongside the Canaanites,
Okay.
creating this really fascinating blend that Dr. Mayer calls an entangled culture.
So rather than wiping out the existing cultures, they're
Yeah.
integrating into it this entangled culture idea.
Yeah.
This is kind of a game changer, isn't it?
It is. It challenges that traditional narrative of invasion and replacement.
Okay.
What we see emerging is a much more complex and fluid process of interaction, adaptation, and cultural exchange.
Gotcha.
Think of it less like a hostile takeover and more like a cultural fusion.
Okay, so let's talk about Gath for a second. It wasn't just any Philistine city, right?
No, Gath was a powerhouse.
Oh, wow.
It was actually the largest city in the entire southern Levant during the Iron Age. Even bigger than Jerusalem at the time.
Wow.
Forget those images of these like dusty little insignificant outposts. Gath was a bustling metropolis.
Okay, so what have excavations at Gath revealed about life in this Philistine metropolis?
Dr. Mayer's work has uncovered this sprawling city with fortifications, temples, production areas, all these different neighborhoods. It gives us a real glimpse into their urban life.
Right.
And there's one discovery that's particularly dramatic. This massive destruction layer dating back to around 830 BCE. It's almost like a Philistine Pompeii, frozen in time by a siege.
A Philistine Pompeii. That's incredible. So what can we learn from this frozen-in-time city? What kind of details has it revealed about daily life in Gath?
This destruction layer has yielded all these incredibly well-preserved artifacts, offering a real snapshot of life in Gath. We're talking pottery tools, even remnants of food.
Wow.
This helps us understand not just what their city looked like, but also how they lived, what they ate, and the kinds of activities that filled their days.
So let's zoom in a bit here.
Yeah.
What did a typical Philistine home look like amidst all of this urban sprawl?
Well, the archaeological evidence shows this fascinating blend of architectural styles.
Okay.
We see the four-room house,
Right.
which was a really common design throughout the region.
Mm-hmm.
But there are also some really intriguing house plans that might reflect influences from the Asian world,
Okay.
possibly echoing those theories about Philistine origins.
So once again, it's not a simple story of erasing what came before.
Right.
They're adapting and blending,
Yeah.
creating unique style within this cultural melting pot.
Exactly. And this blending of influences wasn't just confined to their homes. It's woven throughout Philistine society. We find traces of various cultures in their artifacts and practices.
Okay.
Mycenaean elements, hints of Cypriot and Egyptian connections, even new plant species they brought to the region.
It's like they brought their own spice rack to this ancient world feast,
Yeah.
adding these new flavors to the existing culinary landscape.
That's a great way to put it. We even see it in their agricultural practices.
Okay.
Evidence suggests that they plowed deeper than previous inhabitants, actually changing the very soil they farmed on.
Fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
This really highlights how they were active participants in shaping the environment around them.
Absolutely.
But what about their genes? Does DNA analysis offer any insights into their origins in this entangled culture?
It does. While DNA analysis points to some foreign origins, it also reveals a significant amount of local intermarriage,
Okay.
further supporting this whole idea of this interwoven culture. It really blurs the lines between us and them.
Okay. So the Philistines weren't necessarily these giants terrorizing the countryside.
Right.
But the Bible does portray them as these fierce warriors.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, were there real-life Goliaths among them?
Yeah.
Powerful figures leading armies and shaping history?
While the biblical account might exaggerate,
Okay.
Dr. Mayer suggests that charismatic chieftains or warrior kings among the Philistines were very likely.
Yeah.
I mean, these larger-than-life figures are a common feature in ancient societies.
Right. It makes sense. I mean, think of them as the Achilles or Hercules of their time.
Exactly.
Stories might get embellished a little bit,
Right.
but there's often a kernel of truth at the heart of these epic tales.
Yeah, and even the biblical depiction of King Saul as this tall, powerful warrior
Right.
could reflect this reality, mirroring the kind of leadership that might have existed among the Philistines themselves.
So we've got this diverse group, a blend of local and foreign influences,
Yeah.
but did they have a common language that united them?
Right.
Amidst all of this cultural mixing, did they all speak the same language?
That's a great question. And like most things Philistines, it's not a simple answer. While there was a theory that they spoke a Mycenaean-like language,
Right.
because of those potential Asian origins,
Right.
we haven't actually found any evidence of those types of scripts.
So it seems like writing wasn't as crucial to their society early on.
Yeah.
At least not in the same way it was for some of those palace-centered cultures of the Asian.
Right.
But that doesn't mean they weren't communicating.
Of course not.
Yeah.
And we do find these intriguing hints of non-Semitic words
Okay.
appearing in the Bible and other texts, suggesting a mix of linguistic influences within Philistine society.
Like breadcrumbs leading us back to their diverse origins.
Exactly. However, here's where it gets even more interesting.
Okay.
When we do see decipherable Philistine writing later on,
Uh,
it uses a local alphabet
uh,
and a Semitic language.
okay.
But even then, there are still these hints of those foreign origins woven into their writing.
So they're adapting to their environment,
Yeah.
embracing local ways of communication.
Right.
While still retaining traces of their past. It's a fascinating look at how language can reflect cultural change and also preserve identity.
It really is.
But what about their ultimate fate? What happened to the Philistines in the end?
Well, sadly, their cities were ultimately destroyed by the Babylonians in the late 7th century BCE,
Oh, wow.
with inhabitants either killed or exiled.
Yeah.
And unlike the Israelites, who were also exiled but retained a strong sense of group identity,
Right.
the Philistines as a distinct cultural group seemed to fade from history.
So it's like their cultural flame was extinguished,
Yeah.
gone without a trace.
Not entirely. That's where their story takes this really unexpected turn.
Okay.
You see, the Greeks continued to use the name Philistia for that region,
Yeah.
and the Romans later adopted the same name. This geographical label ultimately evolved into the name we know today, Palestine, a name that has come to encompass far more than just a single cultural group.
So even though the Philistines as a distinct group vanished, their name remained etched onto the map, shaping how we understand the region, even to this day.
Exactly.
It's a powerful illustration of how labels and identities can shift and change over time. It's a fascinating thread that connects the ancient world to our own age, highlighting those complex layers of history that influence how we understand both the past and the present.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've been focusing on what archaeology has revealed about the Philistines. But how does all of this new evidence change our understanding of them? What's the big takeaway for our listeners?
For one, it really challenges that simplistic and often negative portrayal of the Philistines that has persisted for centuries.
Right.
They weren't just the barbaric enemies of the Israelites, as often depicted in the Bible.
Right.
They were skilled artisans, innovative city builders, and a culture that left a lasting impact on the region.
It's like we've been looking at this blurry photograph.
Yeah.
And archaeology has finally brought their story into focus, revealing a much more nuanced and fascinating picture.
Precisely. And this revised understanding has significant implications for how we interpret those familiar biblical accounts as well.
Okay.
Take, for instance, the story of David and Goliath.
Right.
It takes on a whole new layer of complexity when we consider the archaeological evidence.
So instead of viewing it as this simple tale of good versus evil,
Yeah.
Israelite underdog versus Philistine giant,
Right.
we need to consider the broader historical and cultural dynamics at play.
Absolutely.
What else was going on at the time? What might have been the real relationship between these groups?
Right. While Goliath might represent an actual Philistine warrior leader,
Okay.
it's crucial to remember that his story has likely been shaped and perhaps exaggerated by generations of storytelling and cultural memory.
Right.
It reminds us that biblical accounts often blend historical events with theological and ideological interpretations.
It's like those childhood games of telephone,
Yeah.
where the story changes a little each time it's passed on.
Ex-
We can still enjoy the story,
Yeah.
but it's important to be aware of how time and perspective can influence those narratives.
Absolutely. And that awareness is crucial when considering any historical source,
Right.
not just the Bible.
Yeah.
It encourages us to ask critical questions, to compare different perspectives, and ultimately to arrive at a more nuanced and informed understanding of the past.
So shifting gears a bit here,
Yeah.
why should we, in the 21st century, care about the Philistines and their long-gone world?
Yeah.
What makes their story relevant to us today?
Their story is a powerful reminder that history is rarely black and white. It's filled with shades of gray, unexpected connections and legacies that endure in surprising ways by challenging those simplistic narratives.
Right.
We gain a deeper appreciation for the complexities of human experience,
Right.
both past and present.
It's like holding up a mirror to our own assumptions and biases, isn't it?
Yeah.
The Philistines remind us to look beyond those easy categories of us and them that can so easily shape our understanding of the world.
Exactly. Plus, their story is just inherently interesting.
Right.
They created beautiful pottery, intricate jewelry,
Right.
and this vibrant culture that blended influences from across the ancient world.
Yeah.
Their material culture offers a window into their artistic sensibilities, their beliefs, and their everyday lives. It's a reminder that even those who lived thousands of years ago were just as human as we are,
Right.
facing similar hopes, dreams, and challenges.
Right. It makes them relatable, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Not just names in a history book, but real people who lived and loved and struggled just like we do.
Yeah.
And by exploring their world,
Yeah.
we learn more about our own. The Philistines highlight how cultural exchange and blending
Right.
aren't new phenomena.
Yeah.
They've been shaping societies for millennia.
Precisely. Their story emphasizes the interconnectedness of human history,
Right.
demonstrating how ideas, technologies, and people have always moved and interacted across borders and cultures. It reminds us that our world has always been a global one, even in ancient times.
I love that perspective. So before we move on to the final part of our deep dive,
Okay.
I'm curious, what's one aspect of Philistine culture or history
Yeah.
that you find particularly intriguing or that you think our listeners would be surprised to learn?
Let me think about that for a second. One thing that I think is particularly fascinating is their pottery.
Okay.
The Philistines were known for this really distinctive style of pottery, decorated with these bold geometric patterns and these kind of like stylized bird motifs.
So it's like we can actually see their cultural blending reflected in the art they create.
Exactly. It's a tangible expression of that entangled culture.
No.
We see elements that hint at Asian influences, but
No.
also those that are uniquely Philistine.
It's like they took inspiration from various sources and then kind of like remixed it.
Yeah, exactly. Created something entirely new, and that's what makes their story so compelling. They weren't just passively absorbing other cultures, they were
Right.
actively shaping and transforming them.
So as we kind of wrap up our deep dive here, what's the one thing you hope our listeners take away from this exploration of the Philistines and their world?
I think the most important takeaway is to never take anything at face value.
Okay,
Whether it's a biblical story, a historical narrative, or even a label we use to describe a people or a place,
right.
always dig deeper, question your assumptions, and be open to the possibility that there's more to the story than meets the eye.
It's like that saying, the more you know, the more you realize you don't know.
Exactly.
The Philistines remind us that history is full of surprises and that there's always more to learn. And that's what makes exploring the past so captivating.
Absolutely. The journey of discovery is never truly over. There are always new questions to ask, new perspectives to consider, and new insights to be gained. And that's the beauty of delving into history. It has the power to challenge our assumptions, broaden our understanding, and ultimately make us more informed and engaged citizens of the world.
So the next time you hear the word Philistine, remember that there's a whole world of history and culture behind that label. They were more than just Goliath's people. They were a complex and fascinating group whose legacy continues to shape our understanding of the ancient world.
And who knows what other secrets their story holds? With each new archaeological find, we peel back another layer of the past, revealing new insights and challenging us to rethink what we thought we knew.
That's what we love so much about the deep dive. It's all about that journey of discovery,
Yeah,
those aha moments that make you see the world a bit differently.
absolutely.
So thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of the Philistines.
Yeah.
We hope you learned something new and maybe even started to question some of your own assumptions about the past.
And until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep into the mysteries of history.
And we're back for the final part of our deep dive into the world of the Philistines. We've been talking about these biblical bad guys, and you know how they were actually way more complex than that label might suggest.
Yeah, it's a great reminder that history is rarely about, clear-cut heroes and villains.
All right.
It's about people, real people navigating their world, making choices, and leaving behind this legacy that's often far more intricate than we might imagine.
And speaking of legacy, the Philistines certainly left behind a complicated one.
Yeah.
I mean, they might have vanished as a distinct culture,
Right.
but their name, in a way, has echoed through time,
Yeah.
shaping how we still understand that whole region.
You're absolutely right. That name Philistia, used by the Greeks and later adopted by the Romans, eventually morphed into Palestine, a term that's taken on even more layers of meaning over time.
Right.
It's a remarkable example of how a name originally tied to a specific group can kind of transcend its origins and become something much broader, even politically charged.
Yeah. It really highlights how history isn't just about dates and battles.
Right.
It's about language identity and the power of labels to shape how we see the world even thousands of years later.
Absolutely. And the Philistine story also kind of forces us to confront our own biases.
Yeah.
For centuries, they were primarily viewed through the lens of the Bible. Right.
Often depicted as the enemies of the Israelites. The other, that whole biblical narrative was kind of constructed against.
Right.
But by digging into the archaeological evidence, we see this much more nuanced picture.
Right.
One of cultural exchange, interaction, and even cooperation.
It's like we're being asked to re-examine those ingrained assumptions,
Yeah.
to look beyond those simplistic categories of us and them that so often distort our understanding of history
Right.
and perhaps even our understanding of the world today.
Precisely. The Philistines challenge us to view the past and maybe even the present through a new lens, one that recognizes the complexity and interconnectedness of human history.
Okay, so as we wrap up our deep dive,
Yeah.
what's the one thing you really hope our listeners take away from this exploration of the Philistines and their world?
I think the most important takeaway is this. Never take anything at face value.
Whether it's a biblical story, a historical narrative, or even a label we use to describe a people or a place, always dig deeper, question your assumptions, and be open to the possibility that there's more to the story than meets the eye.
It's like that saying, the more you know, the more you realize you don't know.
Exactly.
The Philistines remind us that history is full of surprises
Yeah.
and that there's always more to learn. And that's what makes exploring the past so captivating.
Absolutely. The journey of discovery is never truly over. There are always new questions to ask, new perspectives to consider, and new insights to be gained. And that's the beauty of delving into history. It has the power to challenge our assumptions, broaden our understanding, and ultimately make us more informed and engaged citizens of the world.
So the next time you hear the word Philistine, remember that there's this whole world of history and culture behind that label. They were more than just Goliath's people. They were a complex and fascinating group whose legacy continues to shape our understanding of the ancient world.
And who knows what other secrets their story holds. With each new archaeological find, we peel back another layer of the past,
Right?
revealing new insights and challenging us to rethink what we thought we knew.
That's what we love so much about the deep dive. It's all about that journey of discovery, those aha moments that make you see the world a bit differently.
Absolutely.
So thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of the Philistines. We hope you learned something new and maybe even started to question some of your own assumptions about the past.
And until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep into the mysteries of history.
And that's a wrap on this episode. Don't forget to subscribe to The Deep Dive for more fascinating journeys into the past.